Well, here we are again, folks. Good afternoon, and this is the Concerned Forum. And today I'm fortunate. I have that grand gentleman, the noted author, educator, civic leader, and all around good guy, Mr. David Strachan. And we're here today to talk about some of the main issues that we're conflicted with in our country, especially in this election year. But before we get into that, I just want to say something. The word responsibility, I think, is a word that has been kicked around entirely too much. I had a conversation with some friends the other night, and they were talking about the fact that somebody like a Donald Trump is able to rise to such prominence in our political sphere. And this gentleman says that it's the fault of the voters, of the public at large. Now, I tell you quite frankly, I agree with that to a point, because in a country where people are supposed to actually decide or participate who their rulers are going to be, then it behooves all of us to pay attention to what's going on, to be involved, to understand the issues that are happening around us. And that's the way it should be. But as I told my friend, you gotta be cool when you make that grand sweeping judgment. Because unfortunately, although we're supposed to be, and people always throw this term around, it's another term they throw around, democracy. People like to throw that term around as well. But you have to remember that this really is supposed to be a democratic republic, correct? And what we're supposed to do is to actually vote and elect the people that we want to control us, to make our laws. Unfortunately, it's a lot more complex than that. We live in a society, number one, corporations basically control our daily lives, not government. And because of this, a lot of things are filtered out. People, citizens, don't always get the necessary knowledge that they need in order to vote and to participate in our form of government intelligently. You also have to keep in mind that because of the vast difference in wealth, we are rapidly becoming no longer a democratic republic. We are actually becoming more of a plutocracy or an oligarchy. The idea that any poor boy can grow up, get himself educated, run for Congress, and then even run for president, just doesn't happen anymore. You look at this election that we're dealing with now. Billions of dollars are being spent, or by the time everything is said and done, it's got to come up to at least $2-3 billion possibly, and that's coming from both sides, Republican and Democrat. The average person is no way in green apples that the average person is going to be able to accumulate that type of wealth unless they're like a Donald Trump or a Mitt Romney, or they get strong corporate backing like President Obama or Secretary Clinton has been able to get. We are lucky with Bernie Sanders because at least he's shown the way that of a people's election or a people's campaign. But generally speaking, it's kind of a loss. And so the next time someone wants to raise this issue about, well, why are they stupid? Well, unfortunately, some of us are. But also, a lot of us just don't get the facts. And I think that's the problem that we have. Now, I want to, first of all, bring on Mr. David here because I want to ask him some questions, especially about this thing called economy. What do you think about the status?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to be on the program.
And thank you for being here.
And of course, the economy is very important. Now, in this country, as you say, we have a republic, but we have to deal with the reality. This is a place that is not run as a democracy because the type of corporate capitalism we have does not go along with democracy for a number of reasons. Part of it has to be the demographics here. The people who run the economy are very successful because of the diversity of the population of playing people against each other. That is why you have the richest country in the world, and yet half or near half of the people who live here are poor. Now, everyone must learn that living in the United States where corporate capitalism is king, the goal of capitalism is to make profits for the investors,
Right.
and the board of directors and people control the corporation.
Okay.
The role is not to create jobs.
Oh, really?
Yes, it's not to create jobs, even though those who rule always tell people they're job creators.
Yeah.
And that is not true at all because that's not their first priority. Their first priority is profits. They are not here to create jobs for the masses of the people.
I'll be damned.
And so this idea that people sometimes swallow is not true.
David, you mean the Republicans have been lying to us?
Well, I would say
Shock and horror.
The masses of politicians, the group of politicians and the Republican and Democratic Party, which are both capitalist-controlled parties, they have to lie to maintain control. How are you going to control the number of people that live in this country if you don't lie to them and you stuff your pockets? Now, they're getting more and more successful with it now because every year there are more and more billionaires, more and more millionaires. I mean, so they're on a roll in terms of dealing with the masses of people in the country, and the economy is working well in their behalf because people are getting poorer and they're getting richer. So the only way you can do that is to play the people, you know, like the name of my latest book, which is Playing the Game.
Yeah.
You have to know how to play
Excellent
the people.
book, by the way.
And you see, the point is that there are a very small percentage of them, you know, 1/10 of 1%, and they're able to control the people in a way. Now, the thing that you mentioned about people deciding who's to represent them, well, you don't vote for the president, you vote for electors
Right.
that elect the president. Those electors can do what they want. And most of the people in the Congress, 535 of them, I mean, you vote for them in districts, but when they get in there, they do what they want. I would say most of them don't do what the masses of people that live here do. They do what their financial benefactors want them to do. And the corporations have massive amounts of money, and they feed it off to these people, and they function in interests of that 1/10 of 1% that is in charge.
Let me interject something. Now, as black men, we know the history of this country, and race is always
Some of us know the history.
okay. Right, correct. Right, I stand corrected. Some of us know the history of this country in terms of race, but putting that on the side for a moment, just in terms of the structure of government, I know this even in comparison between now and the 50s, the 60s, and now, people definitely feel that they have no say in the government, that everything has been taken out of their hands. And as a gentleman expressed to me, that's one of the reasons why, especially among white working class, non-college white men, they mistakenly put their faith in a Donald Trump because they feel that they have been lied to, that they really, as Americans, don't have a say-so, that it's in the hands of the corporations. I think the dangerous thing about Mr. Trump is that instead of dealing with the real issues, he's more content to point his finger and say that brown person, that black person, that Asian person, they are the ones responsible for your government ignoring you. And I think that that happens to be a very dangerous thing. But I want to know from you, why is it that, say, in 1950, 1945, people felt that they and their government were one, as opposed to now, where people feel that many people feel the government is their enemy that just oppresses them and keeps them in poverty. Why is that? How'd that change come about?
Well, the point is this: in order to maintain the system that we have here, it is absolutely essential to prevent rebellion by manipulating public policy, social and economic policy. So you have your ups and downs.
Right.
After the Great Depression, when the ruling class gave up certain things to the people, like Social Security and various other social programs, the what they call the welfare programs. After the Second World War, they started to take those things back. Unions were stronger, let's say, at the latter part of the Great Depression. And then in 1947, the ruling class was able to pass the Taft-Hartley law, which enabled them to defang a lot of the unions. And they just have been on a roll since that time. Now, at one part of history, let's say in the 50s, you had a certain standard of living where a man could go to work and his wife could stay at home and that kind of thing. That all changed. And as time has gone along, the ruling class, the people at the top, the oligarchs, slowly but surely, they don't do everything at once, but they do everything they can to roll back any kind of social benefits and economic benefits that are directed toward the mass of the people and increase the ones that are directed toward them. When you think about it, if you talk about some of the tactics, the scapegoating that different people have used, like Reagan talking about the welfare queen and young bucks and all that sort of thing. Those are dog whistle type comments directed towards racial animus and getting people to get on the side of those who rule. The real people who are on welfare here are the super rich. If you can go
Wow.
and do a little research, you'll find out that in every place in the country, they have all kind of benefits that benefit the rich. Tax breaks, subsidies, infrastructure development to help corporations and whatnot. Those are the people. Or what Obama had to do with the banks, give them the bailouts. So the rich are on the welfare, and the poor people, or the people underneath, are on an austerity program. And that's what we have now. And these little white men who are very angry, many of them felt they had some privileges before. They don't have these privileges now. And so they're angry about that, and it's taking a toll on them, taking a toll on their health. They're dying sooner now.
Yeah, I read
See,
that.
so there are a variety of things. Plus, you have to consider what the Clinton regime did when it put in NAFTA. You know, tens of thousands of factories closed. These men used to get a living wage there, and now they're getting, minimum wage if they have a job.
Okay, not to cut across you.
Yes.
I'm going to have to get like a duck or a little bird. I barely remember it because I was almost still practically an infant at the time. But this guy Groucho Marx used to have a show that was still coming on. Well, I think I was like maybe 4 or 5. And anytime he was going to make a comment or a guest was going to say something that might be considered funny, a duck would come down. I think it was a duck, right? Or anytime something significant or a no-no word might be coming up, that duck would drop down, and Groucho would say, "Oh, here goes the duck," I vaguely remember that. Well, I need to get one for this show, especially when you're on, because you just did a no-no. I'm looking for my duck now. I got to get that duck. The word you just said was Clinton, and you said it in a negative context. Now, I know when this show is finished today, I hope there won't be thousands of angry black folks out there with ropes and pitchforks trying to get both of us because you said something negative about the Clintons on my show. How could you be negative about the first black? Oh, well, that's what the woman said. She said he was the first black president.
The point is,
my brother, why?
I don't mince words, and I try all the time to tell the truth about these things.
You do.
See, so
you don't try. You do
the Clintons were the people who ushered in the mass incarceration with these omnibus crime bills and the reinforcement of the police, the things that they did to swell the prison population to maybe 2.5 million people, most of those people being black people and the people of color. And that all happened under the Clinton regime. The workers had lost their jobs on all the factories that closed. They went to Mexico, they went to Bangladesh, they went to China, they went to India. There was a flood of businesses going out of the country.
So you're saying that the Clintons started that process?
Yes. Locking up black people for all kinds of incredibly stupid laws that they made, supposedly colorblind laws that were directed towards hurting people of color, like the drug laws.
Okay, well, again, allow me to ask you, you're saying things that really wound up hurting black and brown people, people of color. Now, the average person sitting here watching this would be somewhat confused because the way now, former Secretary Hillary She has swept through the South like Sherman swept through Georgia. So somebody would ask, well, wait a minute. You're saying that the policies, and I do remember Bill Clinton saying something to the effect of, you get one of us, you get both of us. So therefore, we have to encapsulate Secretary Hillary because that's what they said to do.
Mm-hmm.
So that being the case, black people are literally throwing roses at her feet as she travels through the South. They have not turned their, well, yeah, you could say they've kind of, many of them turned their back on Senator Bernie Sanders, who I must say I support. Well, how? See, this is so confusing because you have all these black people in these southern states, especially, supporting Hillary, and you're telling us that a lot of the problems that we're suffering with now, not just as black people, but as working class people, we're going through that because of something that they caused in the 90s.
Well, you want me to comment on that, I know.
If you don't mind, sir.
No, I will comment on that.
Okay.
The point is, first of all, a lot of people have a very short memory. They don't remember these things. And in another area, I feel many black people are very afraid of the Europeans Party or white man's party, what is now the Republican Party.
Oh, okay.
See, so
All right, I see what
rather than think about what they're doing, they just have run to Hillary, even though I don't think Hillary is any friend of the people that are voting for her, these black masses of black people. The point is, you look at her history, her history is not that great, and she's with Bill Clinton and what he has done and whatnot. People ought to relate to that, and the old saying, birds of a feather flock together, and I don't know how in good conscience someone could go and support something like that.
Well, you have to remember, you and I are, we're black Yankees. I married in the South, God rest her soul, and I lived in the South. My mom was from the South, but I'm born and raised here. And I'm starting to believe that we see things slightly different than our brothers and sisters south of the Mason-Dixon. Down there, the religious leaders, elected officials, they seem to have more of a whole sway over the people down there that do show up to the polls and vote. And what's happening, I think, in states like up in the Midwest, who also, except for Michigan, who are following Hillary, they're basically following the lead of our brothers and sisters in the South. And I'm wondering how come, well, with the exception of Harry Belafonte, Danny Glover, and our brother, who I love, he's a great man, Cornell, here in New York. In other words, they are standing behind Bernie Sanders, yet, as you point out, the masses of black people in the South, which is transferring to the North, are pulling for Hillary, which I find strange, especially after the former head of the NAACP came out explicitly and said, I support Bernie Sanders. And when asked why, he gave some of the reasons that you just gave us, yet that doesn't seem to have an effect. Why is that?
Well, there are other factors that influence them. For example, since the 60s, when you are getting more people of color in political office. You have many people who have gotten positions.
Yeah.
This is a class of people that weren't able to do those things before the Civil Rights Act and voting rights. And these people are leading these black folks. They are, as some people call them, a misleadership class of black folks.
Misleadership.
Misleadership class.
Okay.
And then when you really think about this, has the condition for black people really improved that much with their voting and their other black folks in high places and getting big jobs and big political positions and so forth? I don't think it's improved that much. So the point is that...
Excuse us, folks. Okay. I think that one of our technicians was trying to show me something. I think that one of the problems is that, as you say, many African Americans are so afraid of the idea of Donald Trump going into the White House that I think that they're being shaken or being pushed because you have someone saying, oh, well, Bernie's a socialist. He'll never get in. The country won't accept him. And we'll wind up having Donald Trump, which I don't believe that. I believe that if Bernie gets a fair and honest chance, I think there's a very good possibility that he could win the election if he got the nomination, number one. Number two, polls have already shown that Bernie would do an excellent job in terms of going up against Donald Trump. And see, the thing that really I find so interesting is that we're being, people like you and myself, we're being hushed. You know, we're told to hush, let Hillary do her thing. And don't get me wrong, I think that Donald Trump, even though what he says about trade and about military intervention, I happen to agree with. But overall, his policies in terms of race, trying to stop Muslims from coming in the country, and I think he even wants to try and put some Muslims out of the country. I think that's hateful. I am very angry about that, especially when I see, you know, working class guys screaming to kick Muslims out of the country. And like yourself, I'm also a veteran, and I served in combat with guys who happen to be Muslim. We don't do that here in America. And that, to me, is the poison of Donald Trump. Now, people are trying to translate that into saying, well, if you're against Hillary, or if you don't prefer Hillary to be the party's nominee, then you're for Trump. I think that I totally disagree with that. Yeah, I really do. How do you feel about that?
Well, a couple things. First of all, if you keep doing the same thing time and time again, and by the same thing I'm referring to this, the better of two evils, two bad things, and you just take the less destructive of the two bad things. And that's what a lot of people do.
Yeah.
I think it's come to time when people ought to do something different. I don't think there's any way you can reform two capitalist, imperialist parties, like Republicans and Democrats. And I don't think you can do that whatsoever. That's no different than trying to reform a man-eating tiger from eating human flesh. It just can't be done. So it come to the time when we need to think about making that change.
Well, now, I love you, my brother, but that's, I mean, even in the most loving of married relationships, there are disagreements. You know that I disagree with you. I'm a registered Democrat, a proud registered Democrat. However, I do understand where you're coming from. And I also believe that there must be a change. I wonder, why is it that working class people were able to affect change in the Republican Party, whether they like it or not, but it's so hard for working class people, class conscious progressives. It was very difficult for us to try and make positive change within the party. However, I will say, because of Bernie Sanders, I think that has been a good thing for the party, because we definitely need to make some effective change. In terms of people of color, and let's talk about African Americans, I think we need to understand as a people that there are certain things that need to be rehabilitated, need to be fixed, but they are internal. I think sometimes we expect things that we need to do within ourselves, within the community. They don't always lend themselves to a political, how should I say, to a political solution. We have a problem in many predominantly black communities. That problem being accountability. We have the same type of situations, as you say, replay themselves over and over again. Look, for example, at the situation in Flint, Michigan. Now that's an area, I believe it's about 65, 70% African American, and people of color. But the rest of the town are Caucasian people. And see, number one, that should have made no difference whatsoever. That's why we're doing our demonstration at Fox News on May 7th, that's Saturday at 12 noon, because they seem to perpetrate the idea that this whole thing in Flint, Michigan was some type of vehicle for the Democratic Party to get more black votes. And they made a joke out of it. And as far as I'm concerned, the country has sunk pretty low politically, but we haven't gotten to the point, or we shouldn't allow ourselves to get to the point where children, anybody's child, black, white, brown, yellow, red, makes no difference, green, anybody's child being poisoned by the water that they drink in their own home. That's no laughing matter. That's no political joke. And I'm just wondering why the Black Caucus is not making the noise that needs to be made. Why is not the Black Caucus, a couple of busloads of them and their staff, should have made a beeline to the state capitol there in Michigan and camp out and say, Governor, what in the hell is going on? You have children that 20 years from now, their lives will be ruined because of the lead eating away at their brain. And to me, it seems that that's something that's being completely overlooked. I think it's very strange, and I want you to comment on this.
Yeah, well, here's the way I look at it.
Okay.
Those who rule, they don't care about those children. They're not interested in terms of public policy. They're not really caring about the welfare of the people. For example, why would everybody, most of the people be in poverty or near poverty? Why wouldn't we have a better health system? All of those things that relate to social benefit toward the masses of people are ignored. Their goal is to give profit and wealth and income and a regular basis to the top tier of people. That's the goal. They don't care about those people in Flint, Michigan, or anywhere else. The point is to make profit. So what I'm saying is that in the case of things like that that come up, the only way they really respond to making fundamental change is when they think a rebellion is on the way. So that is what the situation is as I see it. Those who rule are not going to make any fundamental change for the betterment of all the people unless they see a rebellion is coming, something like the situation of the Great Depression. If you lean on people long enough and they have nothing to lose, then they rebel. So they just keep it so that they throw enough bones out there to keep people calm and have a good police force and a good army, and that's the situation we have right now in the richest country in the world.
So therefore you disagree with Hillary Clinton when Bernie Sanders says the same things that you just said, and she responds by saying, well, I believe in doing things incrementally.
Well, I don't know about that. The point is, if the police are going around and killing between 11 and 1,200 people a year, I don't want it to stop incrementally. I just want it to stop. You see, so I don't know about all that. And you got to realize who's behind Hillary Clinton, the ruling class, and the money they give to the Clintons, and they've been well vetted. People like Clinton have been well vetted by those who rule, and that's the type of person they want.
How come when you try and express this to the average, and okay, let's be honest about it. Let's put the cards on the table. Average black voter, okay? You try to tell them this.
Well, there's something that comes up. If you try to bring up things like this to some black folks, and I've done it many times, they don't want any criticism of Obama. In other words, no matter what you say, any kind of analysis or criticism, they're against it. They'll say things like, I've had people say, oh, you don't like Obama, all kind of very stupid things when you bring up important issues. And if you go to them and ask them, how is your life better now than it was when George Bush was in, some of them can't tell you. So the point is that there's many people who are so enamored of the idea of having this black man sit in the presidencies, they just have stopped. No criticism whatsoever.
Oh, you mean the second black president?
Yeah, the second black president. Bill Clinton was the first one. And Hillary Clinton is supposed to be the third. That's what it is. You're not supposed to criticize whatsoever. You're not supposed to say anything that would be interpretive. I mean, because people are they're just overjoyed with the fact of his color. I've had people tell me he was a god.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay. So as a former Catholic, then I guess if I ever get a chance to be close to him, I should genuflect and make the sign of the cross.
Yes.
I think that is shameful. I think that's, when you relate things like that, I think that's shameful. I think that's horrible. Because that tells me that as a people, in terms of consciousness, many of us have gone backwards. Many of us have never been there, period. Because I look at how African Americans were in the 60s as opposed to the way they are now. And it's quite sad.
Yes.
And you see, in the first place, I think that what happened with Obama was tragic because you treat a politician like a politician, okay? And you treat God the way whatever your various belief system is. But what we did in the black community to Obama, we removed all sense of responsibility from him for doing things within the black, in relation to the black community. We knew from the get-go that 90%, 95% of the things that he was going to fight for wasn't going to get through. We knew that there were actually elected officials, especially from the South, in the Senate and in the House, that didn't want to even touch this guy because he was black and he was the chief executive of the United States. However, we expected him to fight. And in my estimation, that's what hurt the worst. The fact that he wouldn't, it's just like baseball. You might, you might not hit the ball, but you go down swinging, okay? Because you're setting up something for the next person to come along. And I think that has been a large problem with this last 8 years. And I've had people who kind of think the way that think kind of the way that you do, that are very unsatisfied with Brother Obama. I love the man. I think he has a beautiful family, but that was never the issue. And I think that historians are going to look back upon these 8 years, and they're going to say, well, he moved our healthcare system one step closer. He cut down our involvement in foreign wars to a point. But overall, the 8 years were a time of missed opportunity. And that, I believe, is what is so sad. And another thing that's also sad is that you have to leave us, Brother David. And we will have you back. We are not going to let you go too far.
All right, thank you.
But your time, unfortunately, because I know you have another engagement, and that's unfortunate for us. But we look forward to having you back, and we look forward to seeing you next week here on the Concerned Forum. This is Bob Gumbs and my good friend David, and we'll be seeing you. See you next week. Thank you.